To keep your generator running optimally in altitude between 2,000 and 7,000 feet, a high altitude kit may be necessary. Always follow the precautions listed in your owner's manual before beginning. For safety reasons to begin, disconnect the negative battery cable and remove the boot from the spark plug. Turn the fuel valve off and remove the drain screw in the bottom of the carburetor. Drain the fuel from the carburetor into a suitable container. Once the fuel is completely drained, reinstall the screw. To begin, remove the airbox cover with the two quick latches. Set that off to the side. Remove the outer air filter and the inner air filter element. Next, we're going to remove the inner air housing. Remove the 6 nuts. And set that off to the side. Disconnect the crankcase breather from the airbox and remove the vapor tube as well. There's a nut on the back of the airbox that needs to be removed. And the 2 nuts on the carburetor studs. Once these nuts are removed, the airbox housing can be removed from the carburetor. Use a pair of cutters to remove the cable tie holding the choke wire. Once that's removed, there are some snap clips that need to be removed. Gently pop these out of the housing. We'll free the cables up. These can be spread and the wires removed. There's another cable tie here holding the fuel line. Again, cut the cable tie and disconnect the electrical connectors. One right there in the open, and the 2 bullet connectors behind the panel. Once all the connections are removed, rotate the spring on the choke assembly and carefully slide it back. That spring will want to jump. Do your best to keep tabs on the spring. Remove any remaining gaskets. Slide the carburetor on the studs, make sure it's free of the insulator. Remove the governor arm spring. And push on the governor rod and slide the carburetor slightly out, and that will free the rod. Remove the clamp holding the fuel hose. Loosen the clamp on the propane hose. It's going to be very difficult to remove it without removing the carburetor from the studs first. So the propane hose is a little bit stiff, so there'll be some resistance sliding the carburetor off the studs. Once the carburetor is off the studs, remove the hose. And that's it, the carburetor is removed. Now that the carburetor is removed, it's time to install the high altitude kit. So open up your kit. Alright, all the jets in the kit are labeled by elevation, A, B, C, and D. Find the elevation that suits your needs. And that's the jet we're going to be installing today. So, first, remove the fuel solenoid from the bottom of the float bowl. There's just 2 Phillips screws here. There is an O-ring between the solenoid and the float bowl, so be careful not to use that. Replace it if necessary. Set that off to the side. Now we can access the nut that holds the float bowl on. I'll loosen that with our 14mm socket. Okay, now that's out. Remove the float bowl. Check the gasket on the bolt and the float bowl. Use a small straight slot screwdriver. Remove the jet. The jets are brass, so be careful. Okay, the emulsion tube usually comes out with that. So note the alignment of the emulsion tube. Small end and the ridge go up. You can see them through the throat of the carburetor. Remove your jet from the bag. Confirm the jet's correct. Drop it in. And tighten it up. Just needs to be tight enough not to fall out. Once that's installed, check your float bowl gasket. Set the float bowl back on the carburetor. Check the gasket on the bolt. Install the bolt on the bottom of the float bowl. Notice where the drain screws pointed. The float bowl drain screw will point to the left if you're looking at the choke, and the pigtail for the fuel solenoid will point to the right. Slip the solenoid in place. And tighten up the two Phillips screws that hold the fuel solenoid. That's it. Your carburetor is ready for high altitude operation. Now we just need to reinstall it. Okay, we're going to install this the opposite way we took it off. Get your clamp on your propane hose. Slide the hose back onto the carburetor. I don't tighten it yet, so I can twist the hose a little bit while I'm trying to maneuver this onto the studs. Again, the propane hose fights you a little bit, so make sure the gasket on your insulator is good. Replace it if you have to. Now is also a good time to put the governor rod in place. And the governor rod spring. That's it. Slide the carburetor back into position. Tighten the clamp on the propane hose. Squeeze the fuel line clamp. Slide that onto the carburetor. Reinstall the airbox gasket. Now when you get this choke assembly ready to go, make sure the spring is properly installed. Slide the choke assembly onto the studs. Align the tab on the stepper motor with the choke assembly. Rotate the clip on the spring into position. Reinstall the gasket for the airbox. Resecure the choke wire with a cable tie. Reinstall the clips for the fuel solenoid wire and for the choke wire. There are two. Plug the connections back in for the choke and for the fuel solenoid. Choke connections right there. Fuel solenoid's behind the panel. And resecure the fuel hose to the chassis with a cable tie. Set the airbox base in place. There are two nuts on the front that need to be tightened. Don't forget there's the one nut in the back. The inner airbox panel with the 6 nuts that secure that to the airbox base. The inner air filter element, pre-filter element, and the airbox lid. The slot on the airbox lid is down and to the right. Now we're going to move over to the other side. Squeeze the clip. Reinstall the vapor line on the back of the airbox. And the crankcase breather tube. Those just slide into the cover and into the box. Reinstall your spark plug cap. It's going to take and reconnect the negative side of the battery cable right now. If you have to hold the nut with a wrench and tighten it up securely. Slide the boot back on the cable. That's it. Take your generator to a well-ventilated area and check it for function. Engines jetted for high altitude should not be operated at low altitudes for risk of potential engine damage.